fairy friends, it is Liz, and I am back with a little doll chat. I had a very interesting question from a subscriber, and they were wanting to know what my thoughts were on men who collect dolls. Now, if you know me at all, then you're probably going to already know my answer. The more the merrier. I do not have an issue with that. I don't even see anything odd about it. The only thing is, if we're honest, we usually think of females, we think of women as collecting dolls. And I think that stems from how dolls have historically been marketed. They've been marketed towards females and little girls. And so when we hear about someone who collects dolls, we just, for some reason, we just incorrectly just assume, well, it must be a girl, a woman that's collecting the dolls. That's not the case. I know here in America that that's a little bit the norm, that it would be, you mainly see females who collect dolls. But I do know that there are men who collect dolls. And as a doll artist myself, I know that there's a lot of men who are doll artists, that they also love the doll craft, the doll art, and they also collect as well. Now, I have here two dolls that I thought would be really good examples of a rare occasion. I mean, if you know of another type of a doll, not an action figure, that's kind of a little bit different, just a regular doll. If you know of a doll that was marketed for both a boy and a girl, please let me know in the comments. I know here in America, it's usually, the dolls are usually marketed towards girls only. It's just how it is. There are rare occasions. I consider a teddy bear a type of doll, an anthropomorphic doll. Teddy Ruxpin was an example in the 80s of a type of a doll that both boys and girls liked. But usually when people think teddy bears, they think a girl or a boy loves a teddy bear. That kind of, to me, should be the same. We should have the same kind of view with that as with dolls. But that's not, I mean, if we're honest, that's not the case, and it hasn't been the case. But these dolls, the My Buddy and the Kid Sister doll here, I thought they could help me answer the question a little bit. And like I said, serving as example of when a doll was marketed towards boys, and in their favor as well, when they marketed the Kid Sister, they each were shown in the commercials doing the same types of kids things. It wasn't a type of a doll where there was a specific gender role attached to it. And I know that sounds political and it sounds whatever. We must examine these things so that we can move forward in a healthy way. Gender roles are a thing, and some people subscribe to them still, and some people are kind of letting some of them go. They're not always negative. Mothers are, in general, and females usually have a mothering type of a trait to them, but that is not exclusive to females. Men do that too, because after all, men become fathers of children as well. They're also a parent. So that shouldn't be discouraged in any way, especially if a doll is marketed in such a way as to show nurturing and caring for another human being. That should be something that is included for little boys to participate in as well. A toy company said, boys like dolls too. They need a friend. And I think they kind of got around that by calling it My Buddy rather than My Doll Friend or what have you. Of course, that's terribly generic and wouldn't work. They needed something, catchy and fun. My Buddy, that's awesome. But we can see how toy companies can have a role in supporting healthy play for our kids and unhealthy labels. So when I was growing up, just to give you a little background, I was the only girl and my brother was the only boy. There were just the two of us, and we moved a lot, so we did play a lot together. And his toys, we didn't really, of course, he was a little bit rough on his toys, so I did kind of a little bit watch out for him playing with my things, only because of that. He was rough on his toys and he would often break them. But if he had wanted to play with any of my dolls, I mean, that would have been great. I would have loved that. And I remember him playing with them at an early age with me. Often it would be a deal where I would then play what he wanted, and that's just kids, you know. But it wasn't frowned upon for me to play with his racetracks or dump trucks or his planes or anything like that. And of course we had toys like skateboards, skates, balls, kites, frisbees. There were things that aren't specifically marketed towards a girl or a boy. But I'm talking about the things that were specifically at that time here in America in the 80s marketed as what boys like and what boys tend to play with. It wouldn't have been frowned upon, and it wasn't. Tomboy is usually used as a good phrase. You know, like, oh, well, she could dress up and fix her hair and do makeup. But she was also a tomboy. She could play the sports, and she was right in there doing all the things that her brothers were doing. You know, that's always something positive, whereas there isn't that label that's positive in the same way for a boy. And I feel like that can be very limiting. I think, you know, mama's boy, sometimes in families that's used affectionately, but often it's used kind of as a mama's boy is kind of used negatively. So if a little boy loves to cook with his mom or cook with his dad and do those types of things, sometimes that isn't, you know, there isn't that same type of, you know, label that's healthy. That's why usually I steer clear from labels. I did so with my two kids. I have a son and a daughter, because labels tend to and can unintentionally keep a child from being able to explore. You know, it's as easy as going to the store and you've told your child to not speak to strangers, and rightly so, and then someone comes up that is a stranger to them but not to you, and you say, oh, well, she's just shy. And that's not the case. There's a very real reason you've taught her something healthy, which is don't interact with strangers the way you do people you know. Giving somebody or a kid a label as, you know, she's just shy or sensitive or what have you, kind of makes them consider, am I shy? How am I different from my siblings? And then sometimes you feel you have to, and it's not meant, you know, knowingly to happen, but your kid can say, I'm shy, and maybe they're not. That was just what they were feeling that day. So I just tend to stay away from those things, the labeling, especially with what we now call and have been knowing for a while, gender roles. So at my house, there's no boy or girl chores. Both my son and daughter know that there's no such thing. Taking care of house, taking care of children, taking care of pets, all of those things are for boys and girls, male and female. As a child, you need to learn to do all of those things to take care of yourself later in life. And if a girl is given a baby doll and that is looked upon as something healthy and nurturing and something that helps them to grow, it should be the same for a little boy. After all, they will grow up, maybe be a parent or an uncle or work in a field where they care for children. And if a child is expected to grow healthfully, they shouldn't be discouraged from doing the things that they would like. So with my son and daughter, I tried to have a lot of toys that were creative, things where they could do crafts and arts, where they could be active. And if my daughter wanted a baby doll, then she would get a baby doll. It didn't discourage her from that. If my son was interested in a vacuum, a little toy vacuum, I mean, I didn't see anything wrong with that. He did have a baby doll of my daughter's that she didn't really care for, and he really loved that little thing. He just loved it. Now, we did have some extended family that kind of, you know, asked about that, like, oh, why are you getting him girl toys? And I said, this isn't geared towards a girl or a boy. This is pretend play. And so I feel as though with the age of a boom in consumerism and Saturday morning cartoons that were sprinkled with all the toy commercials, we really got, you know, I think it started in the 60s and the 70s, but the 80s was the heyday of tons and tons of marketing towards kids, and it happens still today. It's actually expanded to YouTube and YouTube commercials. And before the 1900s, how would you find out about toys that a toy company was offering? Well, storefront displays, catalogs, and newspapers. And you would see in those, the printing quality wasn't as sophisticated as what we have now. You wouldn't see photographs, certainly, of the child playing with the toy. You'd see like a line drawing of the toy, and then you would see the description of it, and they try to make it sound exciting and new. And then you'd see the price and where you could send away for it or where you could purchase it. Fast forward to catalogs with photography and commercials, then the toy companies could have the child being shown interacting with the toy that would help sell it. And so they would kind of target who's going to most like this toy. And so they kind of went with what was most likely. The advertising can kind of inform our ideas of what little girls and little boys like. And if you're a kid growing up in that era watching the commercials, then that kind of can, unless you have some sort of outside influence, that kind of can tell you, I like dolls because I'm a girl. And boys will be like, well, I'm not seeing any boys playing with those dolls. They're not feeding the dolls, so that's not a boy's toy. And that can be negative if the boy really would like that. And I guess it's really a family choice of how you would like to raise your kids. But it's always good to be aware of these things and subtle influences that we can have that maybe if we don't examine, we just accept. And I think for all of those reasons and more, which I haven't addressed because it's kind of a complex subject, one for which I'm not really that qualified to talk about, but I think I touched on it in a way that most people understand, certainly the way I understand it and the way that it's affected us. That is, how we're brought up and how the toys are marketed can inform what we feel is typical today for the doll collecting hobby. I feel like life is too short for you to not do what you love on account of feeling that you're going to be judged negatively for it. I mean, my doll collecting doesn't hurt anybody. I mean, on occasion, you know, if I get a new doll and the box is in the way, I mean, somebody might stub their toe on it. But, I mean, the boxes don't stay around too long. I open them up pretty quickly. But doll collecting doesn't hurt anybody. If it's fulfilling to you, then you need to do that. If you are a true doll collector, you understand about all of the many facets of collecting them, all of the different and varied reasons people do collect. You wouldn't want to deprive anyone else by making up silly rules about it. I certainly would never ever say, well, men shouldn't collect dolls. That's a female activity. That's just silly. That's just no. So my thoughts on it, all in a nutshell, is do what you love. Do not be confined by any type of societal norms. And if you ever feel something that seems negative or shaming in any way, you really need to examine that because it probably has something to do with how you were raised, things that you were made aware of by other children, teachers, television. I didn't even go into, television and movies and how that influences us, and just kind of re-examine so that you can move forward in a healthy place where you're like, this is what I do. I'm not embarrassed about it. It's a really great hobby. Well, that doll chat turned a lot longer than what I thought, and I really honestly could have talked a lot longer. There were some things that I wanted to talk about that I didn't, but we'll keep it short-ish here and I'll wrap it up. If you'd like to add to the discussion or you want to keep it going, please feel free to do so in the comments. I love to hear from everyone. Just keep it positive. I know mostly everybody is, but just a little warning there. We want to make sure that everyone feels included and welcome. Anyway, thanks so much for spending some time with me as always, and I hope you have a magical day. Bye-bye.